Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Founders. Today's guest is someone that I've admired for her creativity, her consistency, and her quiet power in the online business world. Coley Bouschet is the founder of Life Goals Magazine, a digital self-development magazine for millennial women, and the powerhouse behind a Pinterest agency, which we will dive more into, that helps creative entrepreneurs grow evergreen traffic with strategy that actually works. We're pulling back the curtain on what it really looks like to build a business from scratch, how to pivot from corporate into the full-time gig, crafting authority and navigating the sometimes messy reality of being a founder. Whether you're building a content brand, pivoting into service work, or wondering how Pinterest fits into the bigger picture, this episode is full of honest insights for you. So grab your coffee or an iced oat milk latte or iced oat milk beverage if you're channeling Coley, and let's dive into this. So, welcome. I'm so honored that you are here today. I've followed your work and we've been in a group container together, and I'm definitely inspired by what you are building. But before we dive into your journey and your experience building your business, for those that don't know you yet, I'd love for you to take a moment to share a little bit more about who you are behind the title, behind the brand. Who is this woman that we are talking to today?
I love it. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. So I live in Portland, Oregon. I moved here a few years ago, like post-pandemic, from Southern California. Um, yeah, I love anything creativity. I have been blogging since Zanga days, like so far back since I can remember. And so now it's kind of cool to like do that professionally because it's like one of those things that I always dreamed up. And same with like my online magazine. I always wanted to do something with magazines back in the day. And so it's fun to like create in that space. But I also have a little corgi puppy. And yeah, just love doing life here, especially in the summer right now. It's like the best time of year.
Absolutely, a corgi puppy. Oh, hopefully you can make an appearance one day so we can see this. But let's talk about the Life Goals magazine and kind of go back to the beginning. What sparked the idea that led to you creating that magazine as well as the Pinterest marketing agency? What was going on in your life at that time, and what sparked that idea that came to mind?
Yeah, I started, I think it was after college or toward the end of college. I really wanted to feel like, so for me, I always felt like success was like for a certain type of person, and I never really feel like I fit that box. And I was always like, okay, well, I'm not ambitious enough or like care to do like all these extremes in order to have what I viewed as success at that time. Um, so I wanted to create a space that involved people doing it in a different way and like actually kind of expand my own mind. So there was a popular hashtag at the time of hashtag life goals. Like everyone would like post that on people's photos on Instagram and stuff like that. And I was kind of almost given the ick by it. Like I was just like, why are we doing this? But like taking no steps for ourselves to like show up the way that we want to and like become our own version of hashtag life goals. And so that's kind of where the origin of that online magazine started. And I just wanted to pull in other people who had experiences of doing things on their terms, whatever that looked like for them. So that started about 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Um, I know it's quite a journey over there. But yeah, it was kind of like a side hustle for so many years. Um, and then during the pandemic, I had quit my job that I was doing alongside of it, moved back in with my parents, and kind of needed honestly something in addition to the online magazine to make money. And so I was like, why not teach service-based business owners and creatives who kind of didn't know that much about Pinterest and blogging and that side of things. And we're really focused on Instagram. I still feel like that's the case. I feel like that's like the main place that creatives hang out is Instagram, but there's other platforms that could really get them more visibility, build their email list, things like that, that they didn't really know of as much as bloggers did. So I didn't want to teach other bloggers. That's kind of what a lot of people were doing who were teaching on Pinterest, but I wanted to teach creatives who didn't really know about it. So that's really where the Pinterest and blogging side came in, to kind of just do what I had already learned how to grow my own online magazine and kind of learn again how to do it for other types of businesses because they're so different than what I was creating, but also, knew the backbone of it all, that I could leverage for them. So yeah.
That's amazing. Now, what were you doing in corporate? Like, what's your background, essentially?
Nonprofit. So
Nonprofit.
nonprofit social media. Yeah. So I did that for 4 years. Um, Back then in like 2015, long time ago, and then quit for that period of time, and then actually went back to nonprofit social media fairly recently. So,
Okay, so that is like your background essentially. That's pretty
yep.
cool. It's pretty cool when we can take what we're doing in the offline space in corporate and how it translates into this like other world, the online space. I found that very surprising because I didn't know about the online space for so long. I wasn't on social media really, and then I was like, what is this world? And I can take what I'm doing in like the regular business world, the corporate land, and translate that into something that I can do for myself and to help people directly. It's always interesting to see how things translate over. Let's talk about the early days. What were those early days like for you? Your first clients, what was that experience? What mistakes did you maybe laugh or cry over?
Yeah, I was kind of doing really anything. I like changed my mind so frequently of like how to grow a business because the pandemic was also kind of just an interesting time. It felt like everyone was sort of in it together with that. So I kind of just felt like I was just like experimenting on, should I offer VA services? Like, what all should I have my packages look like? Like, I just wasn't very structured with anything. But at the same time, that was great learning to just be like, okay, what do I actually like to do? What do I not like to do? I think there was a period where I had someone just ask me if I would do like engagement and like messaging people, commenting on things, and I was just like, that is not for me. Like, and just learning those things in the beginning, I think is important, or at least it was a good lesson for me to like stay in my lane and go deeper with what I do and more specific, instead of going so wide that I can't really be known for anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Like in the beginning, I know everyone's always telling you, like you got to structure your services a certain way and like price it appropriately and whatnot. But like at the beginning, it's like all trial and error, and that really like defines what you want to do in the long term. Like you kind of have to go through that very icky beginning period where you're like doing things that you possibly don't like and like trying things out and like maybe lowering your prices a little bit just to get more people in at first so that you can build, your portfolio or your social proof and stuff like that, which will then attract more clients. So that beginning stage of business is always so interesting to hear about. Let's talk about skills that you were maybe insecure about in the beginning that now you feel like you completely own. Maybe things that aren't really in line with marketing because that is your expertise, but something maybe that you had to learn as a new business owner.
Yeah, I think the kind of public speaking of it all is like not something I ever even saw myself doing, but when I'm giving presentations, it feels like that's something that I have grown a lot in, of being able to like actually present an idea, and like how do you do that from like beginning to end of taking them through a process. Like it was something that I just had no practice in. Like I did go to school for marketing, but like I took like a couple classes on stuff like this, and it was like throwing me back kind of like, oh, how do you like, put together talking to a group of people so that they'll actually like listen to what you are talking about. That's something I would have been too intimidated by in the past. And is something that really surprised me of how much I enjoy it.
What helped you kind of build your confidence in doing it? Was it just like just pulling off the band-aid and doing it and, doing it more often and getting comfortable with it? Or were there certain things that helped you navigate that?
I think the practice of it for sure. Like just doing it more and more over time, I could feel myself getting more comfortable. And then honestly, the more experience I had with clients and knowing what works and what doesn't, like it grew over time of being like, okay, I know what I'm talking about. And I think in the past, that's kind of hung me up is, talking about things like in school, giving a presentation, I felt like I didn't know the subject that well, to be honest, in certain times. And it's like now I know the subject very well. So it's just, refining it and getting better at it once I um, got through that kind of awkward stage of not knowing what I was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know you've gone full time in your business, so let's talk a little bit of that shift. What has that experience been like for you? Were you just like you're ready, you're done with it, you're like ready to move on and go corporate? Did you have some, apprehensions about it? Like how have you shifted into going full time in your business?
Yeah, it's interesting because going back to a corporate job was such a interesting thing for myself because I had told myself like I'm never going back to to working for someone else. And then there was just a period of my business that I just started losing confidence in myself. I just didn't I wanted somebody else to tell me what to do for a minute. Like I just felt like stuff was so overwhelming as a solopreneur. Um and so that's why I went back to the job. And then I always told myself I would do it for about a year just to like get things back going with my business of feeling confident, like taking the pressure off essentially of having it have to be everything. And so, yeah, I stayed, I think, a year and a half. And it just felt like time. Like the business was growing, and I just felt that confidence was back, and I wanted to, I wanted to be the one in charge of my days and what I was focused on. It sort of like gave me a new perspective, I think, of just thinking that these bigger companies or brands or whatever know everything that they're doing and just seeing how that's not always the case. And so it's like, actually, there's a lot of power behind being able to be the one who makes the decisions. So that is kind of what ultimately made me go back to full time, which was always the plan is to be my own boss. But I think I just needed it in that season.
Yeah. I think we need to give ourselves permission to go back when we feel called to. I know that a lot of people can resist it because they feel like it's failure, but it's not, right? Like that doesn't mean that that chapter is completely over and you failed. It just means that you just maybe need to take a break. And I feel like everyone can probably relate to the fact that you're like, I just don't want to be the one making all the decisions all the time. I just want someone to tell me, do X, Y, Z, and I just want to do it and kind of move on and not be in charge all the time of everything. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you do need a break and that's healthy. But then like coming back to your business afterwards, that's so awesome that you finally like got what you needed from that moment and then you were able to come back. Now, let's talk about this whole endless idea generator that I've seen. What does this actually mean? Like, I know for me, when it comes to marketing and stuff like that, that's not my wheel bank. Being creative and coming up with endless ideas is just, it's a struggle because I'm more operations. So I'd love to know like what micro habits do you have in place? You know, what types of like rituals or like things that you do that keep you creative so that you are generating all of these ideas consistently.
Yeah, there's a few things. There's something that I learned, I don't, it was a while back, but the idea of starting something right when you're inspired by it instead of like, if it's client work, for example, it's like you hop off the call where you're creating ideas with the client, let's say, and then I'll be like, okay, do that later. And instead of doing that, I'll like to do things like immediately when I'm in that inspired zone, but then stop like midway through and be able to pick it back up at another time. I think that helps me because I can be somebody who feels a little overwhelmed when starting something from scratch. It just feels like, oh wow, that's like too big of a thing. So that tactic kind of helps me to be like, okay, we're picking it back up, and you're like excited by it because it's like, oh, it's already like 50% of the way through, and you just adding on to it, and kind of like intentionally being like, I don't need to finish this all at once. And then another thing is kind of just having idea banks. I'll just brainstorm all in like one session of when I'm in that inspired state. I'll brain dump a whole bunch of ideas. And then essentially, even if it's just in my notes app, like I'll just go through those ideas when I'm ready to write something. And I can pick from that whole selection of things, which makes it so much better again because I'm not starting from scratch. I like have ideas to work with. And then also for my personality, I don't always want to do the thing that I said I was going to do on a list. So this is like a little hack that I use for myself of being like, okay, you can choose from any of these concepts that are already strategic, like they're already with those things in mind, but I get to choose from them when I'm in that zone to write. And that gives me the freedom that I feel like I need.
I love that. The idea, I haven't tried that, but having like inspiration for something, starting it, stopping it, and then coming back to it, I'm gonna have to try that. I'm gonna have to try that. I do have like library banks and stuff like that, but for some reason I never go back to them. So I'm gonna have to start doing that because there could be gold stuff in there. So yeah,
Yeah, isn't that funny how that works? It's like you
it
have that sprint of ideas and then they never get touched again. Yeah, I've also done that for sure.
feels like a good idea in the moment, and then you're like,
Mm.
maybe not so much, and then you just forget about it. But definitely creating that library bank when you are like in that moment and you have that creativity and stuff like that. Because you need to be able to pull from something when you are in a slump. You know what I mean? You can't just stop because you're not creative. So let's talk a little bit about burnout. Every founder hits burnout at some point. There's not one founder that I've had conversation with that hasn't gone through it. What was the last moment that you considered stepping back, and not the one where you went back to corporate, but maybe just taking a pause or a moment of a break with your business or something like that to maybe unplug and reset, maybe for a weekend or something like that. And then what brought you back to it?
Yeah, I have taken quite a few breaks. I mean, I know you said instead of the corporate one, but I will say since I started Life Goals Mag like 10 years ago, that has been an interesting one because I was honestly kind of shocked at how long I retained my passion and energy for it. And then a couple years ago, it just hit a whole block where I was just like, I feel bored by this. I feel like I don't really know what the purpose is anymore,
Mm,
or like it just didn't feel connected as much anymore. And I think that really was because I hadn't really refreshed the process since creating it. I mean, there's been a few moments, of throughout those years of kind of refreshing things, but it had been stale for a minute. And so that really was something I was going to leave behind and just completely quit, honestly. I was kind of going back to my day job to see if I wanted to continue it or just stop it. But basically, for a whole year plus, I did not write a single blog post on there. I left the Instagram, Pinterest, all of it behind. Um, and recently came to the conclusion that really, when I'm thinking about my passions in life and like purpose and just the message really that I want to have in life is for people to be obsessed with their life and business and not feel like mediocre about it or, um, like just going about their day to day. Like, I want people, including myself, to feel
Mhm.
really excited by the things that they're doing in all aspects of life. And that's what I always come back to. And I'm like, that really is the essence of why I created Life Goals Mag. So this is like a bigger version of this, but bringing it back now, I'm like doing a whole rebrand. I'm bringing it new life, a new mission, a whole thing. And I think sometimes for me, it's really taking that pause until I have that aha moment of like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. And like that feels really good to me. And if I'm in a confused state, I'll just, when I can, pause until I have that moment of clarity. Because I don't know, I work best in those moments where I know with a gut feeling that like this is the direction. And then I finally had it after over a year of kind of leaving it be.
Yeah, I totally get that. Um, with Project Love, that was like an old name from like before that I just kept and just ran with it when my business model and services changed. And, like I've been doing this whole certain aesthetic and this whole brand and services for a while now. And I was just like done with it. You know what I mean? Like, when you get like, it just starts to get boring and it's just outgrown. Like you've outgrown it essentially. And like you're in this different you've evolved essentially. You're in this different space essentially. And for me, I was just like, I'm done. Like, honestly, like, I'm done posting. I'm done, like, showing up online in this way. I'm ready for this new chapter. And, honestly, like, I'm okay with, like, just being quiet in this moment until I'm ready to, like, unveil the next iteration of what this is going to look like. But sometimes you need that pause to go quiet. Sometimes you really just need that. And it's okay. Like I've realized that like my following has continued to grow. Like it doesn't burn down the house. Like things are still happening behind the scenes. I still got a client like coming in and like all that type of stuff. It's actually really like healthy to take that moment to pause. Like I find if I would have just like pushed through and just continued to like hustle and do all that stuff and like show up and like even though it's not what you want to be showing up as right now, you still have to do that until you're ready to like to flip the switch. And I'm just like, no, you know what I mean? Like you don't need to
Yeah.
push so hard all the time. Yeah. So definitely encourage anybody tuning in that's in, any kind of situation that's similar to ours, like it's okay to pause if you really feel the nudge to. Nothing is going to happen. You can always pick it back up when you are ready to.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the other thing that really got me stuck a lot is just feeling like you have to do things the way everyone else does things online. Like for such a long time, I was, taking courses and just learning from other people, feeling like more and more like I didn't know what I was doing, even though while I was running Life Goals Mag those years prior, like I took a few courses, but I wasn't really just following everyone's things. Like I was barely on Instagram for that business. And once I was just like, oh my gosh, there's so many rules and so many people telling you this is the only way to have success. And at the same time, I had had some version of success for Life Goals Mag without following any of these rules. And so it was a good reminder for me to be like, okay, but what if I just don't want to, what if I don't want to be on Instagram? What if I don't want to do things a certain way until I find a way to do it that feels fun for me or use other platforms that, would work better? There's just like no strict way to have success, and there's so many other versions. Like you could find somebody who is successful without doing anything that people are talking about, you know?
hmm Oh, that opens up like a whole can of worms that we should talk about here. Yeah, like this online space is such BS, to be honest.
Mhm.
Like there is no one way to do anything. You can find your own way of doing it and be successful on your own terms. Whatever that means to you individually, it doesn't mean you have to make $1 million. These big accounts, not all of them are even profitable or doing very well. You know what I mean? Like numbers mean absolutely nothing. I've come across like no platforms whatsoever of businesses and women that are hugely successful. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it it doesn't mean anything at the end of the day. And what you mentioned about like following too many people, taking too many courses and seeing like what everyone's telling you to do and stuff like that. I was just thinking about this like recently where I was like starting to question like, do I know enough? But it was because I was spending too much time following other people for education purposes, you know what I mean? Like mentorship or like I was turning myself more so into like a student versus using that platform to educate myself and to show my expertise and like thought leadership. Like it was like the wrong use of the platform, which started to affect me in a negative way as somebody who is supposed to be an expert in XYZ. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you really need to pull back how much you are trying to learn from others. It has to be like a healthy balance because it can actually start to negatively impact you.
100%. Yeah. I go through periods where I go and mute people, or actually I kind of just do it as I feel triggered or comparison or like anything that can come up. I'm getting better at on the spot just like muting that person because it's nothing to do with them. It's just how it and it always depends. Like different people can start being like, oh, like they're talking about something too similar to me. So then that starts making me feel weird because I'm just like, I never want to feel like I don't know, copying someone or like if I had an idea to talk about something, then I go and see it. Like that just would happen to me kind of often. And I would be like, oh no, I can't let that impact my creation. And I still am doing this and I am really working to do it less is just yeah, scrolling on my phone more than I'm actually creating. And that is really, really bad for my creative zone. Like it just feels like um I've got nothing left after I've consumed everyone else's content, whether it's the education content like you're talking about, or just even mindless content. It's like, all right, what room then do you have for being creative? I think it really takes quiet time and just time off of consuming people's content in order to get creative. Like, I think we think we'll be inspired by other people's content, and sometimes we are. But I think that's less frequent than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. One idea that I had that could completely tank was, my business account once I relaunch or launch my new brand and whatnot. That is solely going to be used for connecting with potential clients or community members or peers. Strictly like that's it. That is what I go onto that account to do is to connect with people and to attract clients and whatnot as well and to like be the expert in my space. My personal account, that's where I can then go to like be inspired or to like learn something from accounts that I'm like looking to gain knowledge from and stuff like that, but keeping it separate because like I feel like that might help with the mindset issue that it starts to trigger when you're mixing
Mm.
that whole bag there.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, might totally fail, but we're gonna try it. See, now, like, what's been the hardest no? We know that it's so important to hold your boundaries and to make sure that just things that you're moving forward align with the ultimate vision, your North Star and whatnot. But there's always no's that come along with that that you need to say. And sometimes it's something that you might feel inclined to do, but it really doesn't align, or you're not in the space for it. So, what has been the hardest no that you've had to say to your business or in your business to protect it, but also to protect your brand identity, your personal energy, and whatnot as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is taking on clients who want a lower pricing. And I've done it a couple of times, and each time that I have done it, it has not been an aligned client. And that's not related to budget. I think it's just more about expectation. Um, because it still, in those cases, kind of felt out of like above what they wanted to pay in the first place. So it's just like felt like I was constantly like trying so hard for this client, but also feeling like the expectations were so high. And that has just been a lesson also just across the board of aligned clients. And like when you feel like a relationship might not be the best, um, like honestly saying no, or a lot of times for some reason I just think it works out how it's supposed to, and I kind of just trust the process now. It's like if it's meant to be that we work together, then we do, and then times that it hasn't, it just kind of feels like it's sort of a mutual like thing. A lot of times it's like, okay, I think maybe we're not the best fit for each other. But yeah, the times that I've kind of made myself bend over backwards sort of for things that aren't aligned for me are the biggest lessons. um yeah.
Yeah, I mean, taking clients that aren't a line fit, that's just going to bite you in the ass at some point. So be very careful with that. It doesn't turn it into an enjoyable experience. And then I think the more you do that, you can start to resent your business as well, which of course you don't want to, right? So yeah, be very choosy and picky with who you choose to work with, right? Let's talk about Pinterest a little bit. That is not my jam, so I am curious about it. However, I do find myself going to it more frequently than anything else to like search for stuff, which is
Yeah,
so interesting because that is probably what a lot of people are doing. And there's probably so much potential that we are missing out on because we are not using it in our strategy. So, first, I'd like to know right off the bat what types of businesses do well on Pinterest.
pretty much if you are a visual brand, if you because there's some businesses that are not as visual, right? But if you are educating, inspiring, those kind of things tend to do well on Pinterest. You might have to, do a little design design work more for some than others, but ultimately, most brands work pretty well on Pinterest. I think the other aspect is search, right? So if somebody is searching for your type of content on Pinterest. So there are some industries that they're searching for less, right? Like, I mean, I think Pinterest is most known for design, weddings, DIYs, those kind of things, fashion. And those things do perform probably better than any other industry just because of the popularity of people searching there for those items or industries. But that doesn't mean like service based entrepreneurs can do really well on Pinterest. And it's also quite an untapped platform for a lot of people. So there's so much opportunity there. If you are a copywriter, a designer, photographer, like really so many industries could do really well on Pinterest.
Right off the get-go, like how important is your pin? Like for me, when I'm looking at pins, if it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing to me, like I'm not clicking on it.
Yeah.
So, like for if you could explain to us like what makes a really good pin in your opinion?
Yeah, so there's a couple different types of pins. I categorize them in two main buckets. So you have like your zero click pin is what I call a pin that is basically meant to be saved. It's not necessarily meant to be clicked on, and that is important for your account to grow. So ultimately, we want clicks to our website, of course, but like we also want people saving our pins. And I think we all experience pinning stuff to our boards, and that process. And so that is also really helpful for an account. So with those, you want basically all of the information somebody needs to be within that graphic itself. So those can be kind of like, I feel like infographic feels like a old fashioned word for what I mean, but like, kind of giving all of like if you teach in your content, having a pin like that. Sometimes just pins with product images are those types of pins, though ultimately those would probably be click centric pins. So those types of pins where somebody just needs to save it. And then for other pins, you want to have a call to action in the graphic, ideally. Um, and where possible, telling them exactly what they're going to find when they click through. So I always recommend that people have freebies on their blog posts that align as much as possible with the blog post that you're promoting. So you could do something like, and get my free guide along with like the title of your blog post there. Um, and then having a really clear, easy to read headline, honestly, sometimes depends. It really depends on the industry, but like bigger can be better. But one thing I would have everybody do is a little experiment where you go on Pinterest and type in some keywords that are around your business. So let's say you talk about what's something that people talk about in your
In my world,
niche a lot. Yeah.
like client experience mapping or
Okay,
SOPs.
perfect. Perfect. Client experience mapping. Okay, so let's type that into Google. Client experience, there's definitely stuff there. So type that into Pinterest, whatever words come to mind for your business. If you're listening to this, like type those words in, see what comes up. So that's like a really quick, easy thing that you can do to like see what designs are people creating in your industry, what topics are they talking about, because it's going to be different for everyone, the types of pins that are successful, but you can see what is performing well just by doing a quick search for topics that you already have. And then just taking notes like, do they all have calls to actions? Like, what do their graphics include? And you want to stand out, so you don't want to have it be, like you're creating the same stuff as what these people are creating, but it gives you a good idea of what your competition looks like, um, and what is successful over there.
Now, if you had to start completely from scratch on Pinterest in 2025, so this year, what would that strategy look like?
So that would be the first part, would be researching. So doing some different keywords that you have, researching them on Pinterest, doing that with the like seeing what shows up. And then also Pinterest is really cool because it kind of gives you a bunch of data within the platform itself. So you could start typing in something like client experience and then see what keywords follow suit with that. And then that is kind of how you can initially start out your keyword research, is just by doing some of that. There's other tools out there that you can use for it, and a lot of Google search stuff is fairly similar, so you can also like use that to come up with keywords, because this can be like a tricky part, I think, for some people to be like, what the heck are people even searching for? But there's a lot of tools out there. There's a lot of free tools as well that you could just look up for SEO keywords. But from there, so that's the initial step, is kind of do some research, see what people are pinning about. And then I would look at existing content that you have to promote. So if you have blog posts, the reason blog posts are still so helpful on Pinterest is because it leads onto your website. And that's where you have the most credibility according to Pinterest. It's like an easy way for them to verify and vet you as a legit person who's pinning and not leading them to a spam site, right? So they actually read your website. And so your blog is really helpful because it lives on your website and is also another way you can nurture your audience, showcase your expertise before they purchase something from you. So I know blogs can feel like a lot if it's not something that's already in your content creation process. But if you do have blogs, I would start making some pin graphics for them. You can purchase templates, you can get some on Canva. There's so many templates out there. Customize it to your branding. I like to create like 5 to 10. Plus, honestly, you can do as many as you want for each piece of content. But to start with, 5 to 10 is a good amount to do, and then kind of start pinning. I don't pin the same post back to back, like spread it out a week or so. Um, but really, you could start even with your Instagram posts. If you don't want to blog or that feels too overwhelming, just start with whatever pieces of content you have, make new graphics for it, and then start pinning those with the keyword research that you did. Put those into a couple sentences for each of them and a good title. You could use AI if you want to, if you feel comfortable with that, or, just brainstorm different titles and stuff like that. But don't overthink it to start with, is what I would say. It's like do the research, um, create your designs, and then just start trying out things.
Okay. What is one Pinterest myth that you still debunk for your clients when they come to you and why?
There's a few. I think one of them we already talked about, which is the, who Pinterest is for, because I think some people feel like they couldn't be successful in their niche on Pinterest as much as other niches. But again, do a quick search. You can see with keywords like does anything come up? If nothing really comes up, then you have your answer. But I would doubt for most of you that that is the case. And then I think the other thing is comparing it too much to Instagram. So Instagram is a completely different platform. And yes, you can repurpose content that you have created on Instagram, but it works completely different. It is a search engine first and foremost. And that makes it nice because it's kind of can be hands off, which means like you could schedule all of your pins. You don't necessarily have to interact with a bunch of people's content. The whole Instagram thing of like interacting before and after posting and all of that can feel like a lot. And Pinterest is nice because you can kind of set it and forget it, more so. So that is one of the great things that makes it different. But it also is, descriptions are different than captions. They're not something that you can just go copy your caption over to Pinterest and have it be performing. It is based on search. So you need to be thinking about what is Pinterest going to perceive of this description, the title, and the image. The image is actually really important. They look at the image to see what it is that you're talking about. So it's trying to gather as much information as possible. It's also looking at what other people who are pinning your account are pinning it to, what boards are they pinning it to. When they pin from your website, like, where are they sorting that into? Um, those things are all a factor, some of which you don't really have control over, like other people pinning. But those factors are at play, which makes it so different than Instagram.
Gotcha. All right. So, if people want to work with you after learning a little bit more about Pinterest, what do you have available to support your community?
So we have done for you Pinterest management, that really takes over your Pinterest altogether. We do all of those research things that we're talking about, looking at competitors, looking at trends, all of those things. And then we also have Pinterest in a week, which is basically doing all the things we do for our Pinterest management clients besides the actual month to month management. So we give you 15 pins ready to go that have the descriptions, everything done for you. We have a strategy guide that you get that is really personalized to you and your industry. So you can just follow that guide essentially. And then we do a profile makeover. So you're all set basically with Pinterest from the Pinterest in a week, and you get it in a week, which is really fun. So if you're impatient like me, that's a great one. And then we offer blogging. So we have a package that's 4 blogs a month. So if you're in the stage that I was talking about where you should be blogging, but you don't necessarily want to be blogging, but you do have a lot of content that showcases your expertise, we could take that content, make it sound like you in your blog form, but also optimize for SEO and AI recommendations, which is very interesting because that is becoming more popular for people to search for recommendations on ChatGPT and other platforms like that. So we are starting to incorporate that. And then we just added email marketing. So that kind of completes the whole funnel essentially. People come into you from Pinterest, they go to your blog to learn more about whatever topic you're specializing in. They ideally opt into an email form, and then you are in their inbox regularly with the nurture sequence and all of that. So we can essentially take over the entire process for someone if they want that. And then we also have mentorship. So that's more around content creation and helping somebody DIY all of those aspects themselves.
Amazing. All right. Well, if anybody wants to learn more about you, where can they find you online?
We're at lifegoalsmarketing.com and at lifegoalsmarketing on Instagram, Pinterest, all of the platforms.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was so lovely meeting you, despite us being in the same group program for a while, but connecting and getting to know you even more, and learning more about your experience and your journey building your business, as well as, the Pinterest world and everything that you've just shared with us to help us take the first steps, if that is something that is part of our strategy for 2025 and beyond. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This is so fun.